And this is 20 Minutes of Impact from the United States Energy Association Power Sector Podcast. I'm Herman K. Trabish. I've covered the power sector since 2006, and I currently report for Utility Dive. In this episode of the podcast, my guests are two officials with Colorado's Platte River Power Authority: Distributed Energy Resources Service Manager Zach Borton and Manager for Distributed Energy Solutions Bryce Brady. And they're going to describe the new virtual power plant, or VPP, they are working to make available on their system this summer. Bryce has been with Platte River almost 12 years, continually on the customer side of management, and Zach's been with Platte River almost 4 years after many years working with other public power providers and electric cooperatives. So let's get started. Bryce, tell our listeners about Platte River Authority and about your VPP.
Thanks, Herman. So Platte River Power Authority is the generation and transmission entity in northern Colorado, and we serve 4 distribution utilities. And with that comes all of their customers. Part of our long-term strategic plan and the energy transition to become a more non-carbon producing energy company is to incorporate our customers through distributed energy resources. So Zach, give me a little bit of why we need to do this into our non-carbon plan.
Yeah, thanks, Bryce. Hey, everyone, this is Zach. As we transition to non-carbon, like resources, solar, wind, hydro, we lose that dispatchability in our power supply stack. So we need dispatchability, which comes in many different forms. One of those dispatchability levers of the future is going to be our VPP. And super excited to kind of grow that dispatchability resource for our operators. But I'm also curious, Bryce, what has Platte River done in the past with other programs?
Yeah, thanks, Zach. So working with our 4 distribution utilities, that's Estes Park, Fort Collins, Longmont, and Loveland, Colorado, we've been working for many years together on efficiency and electrification programs that have really paved the way for us to get where we are today and expand those customer offerings into the VPP or flexible programs in the future. And really what that provides is an opportunity for our customers to become part of the energy transition as we move forward.
Interesting. I know that Colorado is a great state for public power and for electric cooperatives. Did something around you interest you in VPPs, or what was the forethought and the decision making that went into your commitment to develop this VPP? And by the way, why did you pick EnergyHub, which is a very experienced provider of or implementer of VPPs? How did you come to pick them?
Yeah, absolutely. On that first piece, this is Zach, by the way, and just thinking about that dispatchability issue, as we transition to non-carbon resources, we lose that dispatchability and we have variable energy resources. So VPP is an attractive way to bring dispatchability into your portfolio, and it allows us to really create that flexibility. But when we think about creating flexibility, it's really not just software, right? There's many systems and processes that need to be put in place. So we think about all of the software and other initiatives that are out there, and we look at EnergyHub as being a leader in providing those software solutions. But like I said, VPP isn't just software. So we have to do a lot of work on our end to enable that processes and systems and people approach. And that's really where Efficiency Works comes in. So I'm curious, Bryce, can you explain a little bit more about efficiency?
Hang on just a second, Bryce. Bryce, hang on just a second. Let me ask you something. Before we move on to Efficiency Works, which is going to be a major factor, as I understand it, in the implementation of this program, I want to go back to something you guys have touched on 2 or 3 times, and we didn't really explain it. You said that dispatchability is a very important feature of this VPP. And I think we need to just make it clear to folks that are listening that dispatchability means you take something that maybe isn't always on, like solar, but you put it in a virtual power plant with lots of other solar systems, so that you know that you can dispatch a certain amount of solar at any given moment when you need it. I guess.
Yeah, This is Zach again, and
Okay,
we think
yeah, answer
about
that, Zach.
maybe dispatchability as a few different types of levers under that bucket of dispatchability. So there's like energy shifting. So when we think about EVs, those are really good assets to shift energy usage at other times where it doesn't coincide maybe with peak demand or when those renewables aren't there on the system. So that's one element of dispatchability. It's shifting that energy. The other element of dispatchability is kind of that emergency lever. It's something we can pull to drop demand in that critical time period, whether it's the overall system is kind of peaking or specific points on the distribution are getting overloaded. So we're trying to design a VPP to have many elements of dispatchability, from energy shifting to emergency, DR response, to, trying to stack that portfolio of what each program can deliver to one, overarching VPP that can deliver all of our goals.
And
So
this may be a
hopefully
Bryce question. This may be a Bryce question, and it may even bring us to efficiency works, which is where we were going before we took this left turn. But you're going to have this VPP is going to be composed at its basic level of distributed energy resources, which are commonly called DER. So what types of DER will be incorporated into this VPP?
It's a
Bryce, you
great
want to
question.
take that and talk about efficiency works there?
Yeah, I'd be happy to, Herman. Great question of what goes into the VPP, what fuels it essentially, and there's lots of different things that can do it. You mentioned solar a few moments ago. Zach mentioned EVs or electric vehicles and the charging that goes with those. There's the opportunity of smart thermostats that could go into a VPP, battery systems at different homes or businesses, many other smart connected devices. So I kind of think of the VPP and the fuel or the DERs that go into it a lot like a retirement portfolio. You want lots of different things that can go into it. That way
Excellent.
you play the market over time and you go with the ups and downs and have it dispatchable or usable in different ways throughout its future. That's where we kind of take it to what are DERs and the types of them into the efficiency workspace. These devices become part of the people. Efficiency Works is how we connect with the people out there. It is a brand. It is not a separate entity or anything. It's just a brand of programs and services that our utilities have come together and created for a commonality and a consistent regional offering to everybody here in Northern Colorado. And what does it play with our new customer programs with VPP? Well, it allows us to expand our existing offerings. For years, we've been offering programs in Efficiency Works to help local customers use their energy effectively. And part of a way to do that is to take advantage of our energy advising services or our energy efficiency and building electrification opportunities, and then leverage those and expand them into flexible programs where you might install a smart thermostat or an EV charger or buy an EV that's connected to the system, so we could have some smart charge management practices going on to allow those dispatchable levers to be pulled, as Zach was describing.
Does Efficiency Works have anything to do with controlling the programs that it incorporates, or is it just about signing up customers for the programs? And who does control all these programs? Is it each individual utility, like Platte River will control its own, and Longmont will control its own, et cetera?
So that's a great question too, and I'll jump right back into that one since I was speaking about Efficiency Works a moment ago, Herman. But the idea of Efficiency Works is we have come together as a collaborative collection of utilities to make decisions in a common format. So what'll be controlling things behind the scenes is a common approach as all 5 entities, Platte River, Estes Park, Fort Collins, Longmont, and Loveland, work together to come up with scenarios to put out control sequences into our community. So it won't be any one utility. It'll be a collaboration of the Northern Colorado group of utilities to do this in a way that brings customers along with that energy transition, but does not compromise their energy reliability or comfort within their own homes.
Interesting. So this may be a Zach question. I know that you're working with EnergyHub to implement the VPP, and it's going to, of course, they're going to use their edge distributed energy resource management system, their EDGE DERMS. And they often work with utilities that add something called a grid DERMS, or grid distributed energy resource management system. What are your plans? Are you going to be using just their control system? And I guess I should ask at that point what we were talking about just a minute ago. Are they going to be in control of all of the Efficiency Works programs, or just the customers that you have that are part of Efficiency Works?
Yeah, great questions. And kind of dovetailing off of what Bryce was mentioning about Efficiency Works, we really want to design a demand side management portfolio that's effective. So, that's starting with advisory services, going to efficiency to provide that baseload reduction, going up to that next initiative, maybe some controls and flexibility to provide us getting to that finish line of a full, educated customer, efficient customer, and flexible customer. And so when we think about the systems needed, there's kind of two big software systems. There's the Edge DERMS and the Grid DERMS. And so the Edge DERMS is going to help us aggregate those flexible devices so that we can create flexible programs. So it's not going to ingest maybe some of our historical efficiency programs or building electrification programs, but it's going to encapsulate the new flexibility aggregations. And so Efficiency Works will have those programs for flexibility, but they'll be aggregated through EnergyHub's platform. And then we think about the Grid DERMS. What is the purpose of the Grid DERMS? The Grid DERMS is really what we can think about as the brain of the future operation. It really helps support the modeling and the topology of not only our system from Platte River's perspective, the market and the transmission, but it really gets into the weeds on the distribution, and it tells us essentially what's available in real time. And so our number one goal here is to not create DERs that are creating distribution issues, but to have DERs help provide relief maybe to the distribution. So if that's step one, then how can we align that relief to market benefits or transmission or generation benefits? So the goal here is to stack benefits using two different systems, the Edge DERMS aggregating and the Grid DERMS kind of as the brain for an operator, an operator on the distribution or an operator here at Platte River.
Okay. I want to ask Bryce a question, but before we go there, I just want to get back to one thing. You talked about flexibility. We've mentioned flexibility a couple of times, and we really haven't defined it. And am I right in understanding that you've talked about EV charging, and you said what's available when you need flexibility? So let's say you have a peak demand period, and you can see through these management systems that there are some EVs charging that don't need to be charging. You could postpone that charging. Is that what you mean by being flexible? So you're flexibly using electricity, and does it mean that that resource, whether it's a EV charging or a thermostat or something else, can be used because you can see where it is and what it's doing at that time? Is that what you mean by flexibility?
Yeah, that's a great question, and maybe using the EV as an example. So historically, we've analyzed EV charging data in our owner communities. One owner community has a time of use rate, the others do not. And so when you look at EVs that are charging on a time of use rate, you actually see quite a big spike in that off-peak period. So customers are waiting for the off-peak period to hit and charging. And so what that creates is a coincidence factor that's larger than the EVs that are not on a time of use rate. So the EVs that aren't on a time of use rate are more diversified, but they contribute more on our peak. And so there's a dual strategy here, right? For the utility with the time of use rate, there's an opportunity to tag that transformer a limit and make sure that transformer isn't going over that limit. And then for the other utilities without a time of use, it's trying to create time periods for that customer to charge within. So Today, they don't really know when the right time to charge because there's not any signal for them. So we want to create that signal for them using renewable availability curves, pricing curves, and peak times. And so at the end of the day, what we get is two optimizations. One's really heavily focused on shifting charging out of our peak. And the other solution is trying to avoid when customers shift to the off-peak period, that big spike that causes at that service transformer. So we're going to be testing out a few things in regards to what flexibility means. Shifting levers of, that hour, things like that.
I think you're going to be using some things that are going to cost the utility money. EnergyHub is going to have its own uh, DERMS, but it's going to probably have some sort of a price for participating with you. And then, of course, you may have to install this grid DERMS. And I'm wondering, are these expenses and the work to manage all these different kinds of loads, are they going to benefit all your customers or just the ones that own DER? Who wants to answer that?
Yeah, I can take the first stab. And essentially, when we look at a formula, and Bryce and I were actually talking about this last week, and he came up with some good ideas, and I'll give him credit for this formula. But when you look at a cost of service formula, it's basically resource revenue minus load cost equal your cost of service. And so what we're trying to do with VPP is not only reduce our load costs, so try to hedge against the new cost structures within the market to reduce our load costs, but also think about what DERs or VPP could go over to the resource stack to enhance maybe some revenues over there to then, at the end of the day, reduce our cost of service to our owner communities. So if we can enhance and reduce our load costs, uplift our revenue, we can reduce our cost of service. And that's the goal, right? And we need to be fully integrated and all on the same page to do that. But I know Bryce has some thoughts here as well.
Yeah,
Go, Bryce.
I definitely have some thoughts there, Zach. So what we just heard Zach talk about is a whole lot of technical utility terms. And the reality is the only way this works is customers have to be involved with the VPP and the future energy transition. So we need to pair it back to how does this benefit a customer if they have a DER device or not? And you're right, Herman, these systems do cost money. We have staff behind the scenes working it. It does cost the utility money, therefore rates, electric rates do offset those costs, but there has to be a benefit for it. And the reality is there's many benefits. For those customers that are able to have a DER device that connects to our VPP, the benefits come in various ways. As Zach was talking about all of the dispatchability and when the price curves and all this complicated terminology was going on, we don't expect customers to know that. We don't expect them to run out into their garage and unplug their car, plug their car back in, and all the other things. That's where the systems come in to help manage that. All we ask is customers plug in, the systems will do the thinking for you, and your car will be charged for you when you're ready to leave for work in the morning, or your thermostat will do its adjustments accordingly. You don't have to think about it. So those that have a DER, all they have to do is enroll in our programming. They can take advantage of the systems behind the scenes doing some control features, opt out at certain times when it doesn't make sense for them, and then collect some incentives for their time and effort. For those that do not have a DER that is connected to our system, there's also benefit. So it's not just spending money to benefit those that have DERs, it's spending money to benefit the entire grid. And that benefit really comes from those devices that are controlled. We can adjust through the flexible load when they're being used to help offset some costs of the utility, so it reduces some financial pressures. That comes right back to every customer in rate relief or rate pressure reduction. The other part is reliability. If we have some constraints on the grid, we can lean into what we know about these devices and where they're at, turn some on and off at different times to make sure the grid remains reliable. So all of the customers, including those that don't have DERs, can have reliable electricity throughout the day and night.
And, I've asked a lot of people, we've talked about VPPs on the podcast a number of times. I've asked a lot of people, I don't think anybody's ever given as good an explanation of exactly how a VPP benefits both kinds of customers as you guys have done just now. I just want to ask you guys one more question or a couple more questions about the program itself. I read that you're trying to get it online this summer. Is that still the timeline? And how can your customers find out more about participating in this program?
Sure. I'll jump in on that, Herman, since
Is
I
that
was talking
Bryce?
about the customers a moment ago. The timeline. So when we talk virtual power plant, the VPP, it's coming in many stages, systems, people, so many phases over time with the utility. And with that means we're going to roll it out over time to customers and they can interact eventually depending upon their device. The initial programs we are planning to roll out later this summer in 2026. We are planning to start with thermostats, so smart thermostats, where folks will, if they have an eligible device, will be able to enroll, get connected, and start earning some incentives. That'll be later this summer. We have some other programs quickly coming online after that later in 2026 and well into 2027. One of them that we're hoping to launch soon after thermostats would be EV charge management, and then we will grow from there as it'll be many different stages and phases over the coming years. So stay tuned. The best way to learn about this as a customer is to check into the efficiencyworks.org website. So it's efficiencyworks.org. And there'll be updates there as we get closer to launch. If you are lucky enough to have a device that's connected to our system, to our partnership with EnergyHub, you'll start to get notifications on your device or your app on your phone as you look at it or set different settings with your thermostat. You'll be notified when programming is available as well. But in the meantime, efficiencyworks.org is the place to go for the latest information.
I think EnergyHub is one of the reasons that they're a leader in this area is because they do a really good job of connecting with customers. Zach, I think you had some numbers for us and some closing thoughts.
Yeah, so it's a phased approach, as Bryce talked about. We're going to be slowly rolling out these programs one by one to get to our 2030 goal. So when we have a 2030 goal of roughly 29 or 39 megawatts rather of VPP capacity, it's broken out into two different flavors. So you have customer resources being 19 megawatts and 20 megawatts of community batteries. So when thinking about these as a resource, there's customer resources and then there's utility resources. So you also need to consider that when building out a VPP. The utility resources are going to be the most flexible, right? We're building these to provide the max capabilities. When thinking about the customer resources, well, there's all of these other factors like OEM limits, customer comfort, that really throttles down the megawatt capability. It also depends, that megawatt depends on where you're at throughout the day. Like, you can't really dispatch a lot of thermostats midday. You kind of want to wait for that evening when everyone's getting home and turning on their AC. So there's that coincidence factor. So we'll continue to drive both sides of the VPP, being customer resources and utility resources, to really get the job done. But all of this work really relies on the continued kind of partnerships and collaborations with our owner communities, the vendors out there, and internal departments and staff, right? Like, we're breaking down that department barrier between us and the owner communities. But there's a lot of barriers to be broken out within our own departments. And so, yeah, there's still a lot to be done, but we've been planning over many years and we're finally excited to begin the launch phase here.
If you, when you say utility resources, you mean batteries, I think. But the customer resources, it sounds like we've talked about smart thermostats, which control heating and cooling.
Yep.
EV charging, solar, probably solar plus batteries, customers that have solar plus batteries. Is that right?
That 19 megawatts is broken up between smart thermostats, which include AC, heat pumps, resistance electric baseboard, water heaters, EVs, CNI.
What the commercial and
industrial. Yep.
So in other words, commercial industrial loads. In other words,
exactly.
If you're a business and you use electricity and you have the ability to turn your use
a
of electricity
process
down
load or
or up at different times, you can participate also in the VPP. Is that right?
that's right. And we're thinking through that, and I know Bryce has been working through that, so maybe Bryce can jump in and add some more there.
Yeah, I always like to take all of Zach's technical words on the utility side and translate them into the customer-friendly version. But the 19 megawatts of customer resources is a combination of many different DER devices that we are going to continue to evaluate over time to make sure we bring on various programs over time that are cost-effective for the utility. Because we are public power, we do not want to overspend our funds because that is rate pressure to the customers we serve. So we have an obligation to really think about how we roll these programs out and what devices we bring online over time. We are considering many different devices like Zach was talking about, and we will continue to evaluate over time which ones make sense and when.
I see. So the things we've talked about are all on the list, but you're not sure exactly how it'll all fit together or clear how much it will be cost effective. Is that right?
That is correct. And as we get closer to launch different things, efficiencyworks.org will have information as we get there. So
Great.
keep checking the website and participate in the things we have available at any time.
Perfect. Okay, I think that's a good place to leave it. It's really been a pleasure to have you guys talking about this new VPP. VPPs are popping up all over the country. We have a lot of wonderful companies that are implementing them, and this is a great part of the growth of VPPs all around. I want to thank my guests, Zach Borton, DER Service Manager, and Bryce Brady, Manager for Distributed Energy Solutions with the Platte River Power Authority. They've described Platte River's move to a VPP. I also want to thank my producer, Melissa Brown, and as always, I want to thank our listeners for taking the time to check out the USEA Power Sector Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, like, follow, and share with everybody you know our quest for energy transition solutions.